Good day to you, wherever you may be. Welcome to Observations. My pleasure to be with you. In fact, my pleasure to be anywhere these days. For those who may not know, I've been almost for 3 weeks now under the weather. I got a case of systemic poison ivy. Poison ivy doesn't sound like it's all that bad until you understand what systemic means, which is, in this case, as I was doing some pruning in my home, I was using a tree saw where I cut my leg at the same time that I was exposed to the toxic oil of the poison ivy, both on my hand and on my shin, and the toxin went directly into my blood. So rather than a rash breaking out upon my skin, the toxin went throughout my blood, and I broke out underneath my skin all over my body. And there's nothing you can do. You know, there's the soaps that you can use otherwise, which would remove the toxin. Well, they don't work. You can't scrub your blood. And there's only two things you can do, both of which really wreak havoc on your body for a long period of time. You have to take the maximum allowable doses of antihistamines like Benadryl, which if you take the maximum, in fact, I even take one Benadryl. It won't put me to sleep, but here I'm taking, 12 Benadryl a day. And then massive amounts of steroids. So that is the treatment, and it's finally gotten to the point where I am functional. Still tired, still achy, still itchy, but oh my, what a difference from where I have been. In some ways, I shared Scott and Kirk with you. I'm sure it's not nearly as bad as it might have been, but it kind of feels like the whole experience that Job was endured, where he had the boils that broke out in his body, and these were massive boils really on my skin, and it wasn't just the discomfort of these lesions, but it was just an ongoing slow torture that you could do nothing about, and that you knew the next day was going to be worse than the day that you were enduring. And so 24 hours a day, you can't sleep, you can't function, you can't be distracted. So 24 hours a day of just...
Totally focused on misery.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really an unbelievable experience. But I'm not sure what the lesson that can be learned from it yet is, other than maybe I should...
Put down that saw.
Yeah, put down that saw, and don't be doing that kind of thing. But goodness, it is nice, even though I'm weak and still achy and itchy, just to be functional again. I was able the last 3 days to go back to translating and reading and writing and doing something, so that at the end of the day I said, well, that was a productive day, because there's something, maybe this is the lesson, and that is that one of the things that I came to realize, I just finished a chapter. I sent it off to you fellows, chapter 8, and yes. Chapter 8 was a tremendous detour, and I decided I was going to chase a rabbit, and the rabbit I wanted to chase was initially, what is the location of Zion? But as I was doing that, I wasn't really trying to figure out where Zion was, because I figured that very early on where Zion is not a separate mountain. It begins at the city of Dode at the lowest ridge line of Moriah, and runs all the way up to the summit of Mount Moriah, which is not where the Temple Mount is. The summit of Mount Moriah is where Abraham and Yahowah met. It's where Yosha, against Golgotha, the skull, became the fulfillment of Pesach and Matzah. It is directly beneath where the Ark of the Covenant sits to this day. And as I was pursuing that, though, one of the things that I learned, and this was a surprise to me, is that I'm not even sure that Zion is a place. I think Zion is a person. I think Zion is Dode. I think David is Zion. I think David exists to show us the way. that his relationship with Yahowah, the fact that he was flawed, and the fact that there were times where he and Yahowah didn't even talk. And there were years where they didn't even communicate directly with each other. They used intermediaries. And yet, during the difficult time of his life, when he was threatened by everything from giants to a king that would have him killed, when times were tough and life was a challenge, he and Yahowah produced the most powerful, profound, enlightening, invigorating lyrics that have ever been written. When life became easy for Dode, when he had a wonderful kingdom, a fancy palace, a harem full of playthings, he didn't write another word. Didn't accomplish anything. Now, he and Yahowah's relationship was no longer as vital as it was, but didn't change God's love for him. But when I began to study this, what God had to say about him, particularly at the end of his life, because at the end of his life, God just said, "Listen, I'm here to tell you, I am his father. He is my son." And he said, we're going to rule forever together. And beyond that, when he arrives in heaven, I'm going to stand up. And I'm going to personally greet him. Oh. And I'm going to announce this to the world. And you say, all right, what is the lesson there? Well, my first knee reaction is it's the same as everything, is that horse's ass known as Paul, the author of half the Christian New Testament, was wrong when he says that the Torah can't save, that if you violate any aspect of the Torah, you're condemned of the entire Torah. Dode violated every aspect of the Torah, and he is God's favorite son.
Yeah, no question.
You can't be any more favored, any more right, any more righteous, any more vindicated than is Dode. And so, that's the first story, is that Dode is the sign that Christianity is absolutely wrong, and that Paul is the plague of death. But it's more than that. What does Dode constantly, both Yahowah and Dode, as they refer to their relationship, they use the word abed. Now, abed is always translated servant. But abed isn't based upon the Hebrew word to serve. It isn't based upon the Hebrew word for slave. It's based on abad. Abad is the Hebrew word for work. And so it's constantly saying that Dode worked with Yahowah. Yahowah worked with Dode. They worked with each other. And what that takes me to is that work is good. For 2 weeks, I wasn't able to work. I didn't contribute a single thing. Established nothing at all that would have any lasting value. And that was the worst part of the whole experience. I couldn't work. Ultimately, work is good. It's through work that we grow. It's through work that we build relationships. It's through work that we add value. Yahowah chose to work with and through flawed humans like Dode. And work is a good thing. So what I came to see is that the signs posted along the way, is the life and lyrics of Dode.
Well, that would imply to engage, which is not necessarily Christian.
Yeah, where the Navad, engage is a shah, to act and to engage. Mm-hmm. A shah.
As opposed to just have faith and everything's done faith.
Right. Yeah, that's the Hebrew word that is translated do so much of the time, that is always used in conjunction with Yahowah's instructions. He'll say, observe my Torah teaching and a shah. Mm-hmm. Act upon it. Engage.
Respond appropriately.
Right. Yeah. Pay attention to my mitzvah, the terms and conditions of my covenant, and a shah. Act, engage. And so these two words are used. They're very similar, Ashah and Abad, and one speaks of investing energy, labor, doing work, and the other speaks of acting, engaging. A relationship requires action, requires both parties to engage, and nothing is built. And God uses the term bana, which is based on the Hebrew word ben, which means a child, and it's the feminine of child. Bana. He uses the term bana to describe building the family home, and it's work. He engages working on it, and we engage contributing to it. And the more we work together, the more we accomplish together, the more we enjoy the relationship, the more we grow, the more we build, the more of value we create. You know, it's why the actual term that has been corrupted to convey Hamashiach, the anointed, is never used as a title, ever. There is no Hamashiach found anywhere in the Torah, prophets, or Psalms. But there is 22 occasions of a Masayah. And Maseh is, there are three Hebrew words for work. Maseh is one of those three Hebrew words for work, and it's the work of Yah. So really, the Yosha is the one who does the work of Yah. So I guess that's the, if there was a lesson I learned in having the plague here, was that when we are precluded from being able to work, particularly with Yahowah doing something that has lasting value, and even if that lasting value, even if no one read anything that I ever wrote in any one of these books, and if I was the only one to be a beneficiary by it, it would be worth it. It would be for Dode if no one ever read one of Dode's Psalms, ever. The work would have been worth the effort. But not to be able to work, to engage, was the most debilitating part.
Amazing.
So there was my two-week lesson, along with the realization that Dode well may be the single most important person who ever lived. And if you recognize, and I know I take a very harsh view, a very limited view on this. I do not view Yosha as a separate, unique individual. I view him simply as an aspect of Yahowah, diminished and set apart from him. And in that regard, since he is nothing but a diminutive aspect of Yahowah, from spirit to matter, I don't view him as unique. And if you have that one qualifier, then Dode is the single most important person who ever lived. More important than Moshe. You know, Moshe did a nice job. I mean, Moshe acquiesced to Yahowah's request, and he walked with Yahowah, he follows his instructions, and he went with him to lead the people away from human oppression. And then he led them into to the promised land, and in the process he revealed Yahowah's Torah to them.
But it's the right man for the right job. I mean, it has to be.
He was the right man for that job. And but even though Moshe did a marvelous job of drawing us out from human oppression and religion and politics and militarism and all that sort of thing, working with Yahowah, and did a marvelous job helping us come to know and understand who Yahowah is and what he's offering. Dode is the individual that symbolizes the way we are to observe, come to understand, and capitalize on the Torah's guidance so that we can be part of the covenant family. So you might say, well, you know, without Abraham, there is no covenant. No, that's true. Without Abraham and Sarah, there is no covenant. Abraham's extraordinarily important. Yeah.
We still have to get to that point where we understand.
Yeah, Dode is the fruition of that relationship. And I think when Yahweh was saying, his kingdom is going to last forever, I think it's God saying, I want to celebrate all eternity.
This type of relationship?
Yeah, with this kind of relationship, with a guy who's passionate and brilliant and courageous and fun and extraordinarily literate and inquisitive. This is the character. This is the kind of character that I want to spend eternity with. So, there's another aspect, of course, of Dode that is particularly pleasing to me. And, maybe this is self-serving in this regard.
Mm-hmm.
But you've heard me say that I am not one who thinks that that there's any aspect of the Torah that is a command or a law or an edict that God wants us to obey. And that I don't look at any part of the Torah, from its instructions on food to its instructions on the Shabbat, to its invitations to meet during the Mikra, to the terms and conditions of the covenant. I look at every single thing that God said symbolically. What is he driving at here? What is the picture being painted here? What is he telling us about himself and about this relationship that is important for me to know, understand, and then respond appropriately to? How do I use what he just said to have a correct and accurate assessment of who God is, what he's offering, and what he expects? So I look at everything he says from that perspective. Now, that's extraordinarily liberal. And I'm not telling anybody that everybody should take that same view.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the view I've taken. But guess who also took that view?
Everything is delusional. And even when you get to the 10 tablets of stone, the 10 tablets, the 10 statements written in stone, which is always, don't make a habit of.
Right.
Then how could you draw another conclusion?
Correct. It's
pretty self-evident if you study enough. He's laid it out for you. How can you turn that into law, obey, when there's no obey and Torah don't mean law by any lexicon?
If you recognize what Dode did and what Dode wrote, and then what God had to say about him, I think the conclusion is self-evident.
You're backed into a corner.
You are in the position that to recognize that God is consistent, that he accepted and loves Dode, that Dode is his favorite son, no question, absolutely most beloved son, that the thing that pleased God about Dode is that Dode made almost no effort to obey. But what Dode did is he made the most extraordinary effort to understand.
Right. That's a very good point.
So, recognizing that's the case, and that God never once held anything Dode did against him in terms of foreclosing his love. That I think that Dode is the Zion. He is the sign that's posted along the way that brings forth the Torah in the manner it is to be viewed. So I see his life and his lyrics as being awesomely liberating and empowering, because if you are totally rational about it, you realize that God has endorsed this man's writings as the means to become the most beloved son. And he made no attempt to obey, and every attempt to understand. That tells me that is the way to observe the Torah. Now, that's pretty profound.
That's radically different than most everything you'll read.
Yes. Yeah, it indeed is the antithesis of everything that everyone else has come to a conclusion of.
But if Yah's dead and he's looking for family, he ain't looking, and he's not Lord, isn't that kind of axiomatic?
Yeah. Well, the very depiction of here's this book on Yahowah, and we're going to begin to review it again, and where God says, listen, I strove to raise you as my children. That means that puts him in the role of father, and us in the role of his children.
Right.
And then you see as he's talking to Dode, and he's saying, you are my son, and I am your father. He didn't say, I'm going to be God unto him.
No.
He is a creative toy for me. He's something to occupy my time. He is a possession that I think is really fun. No, he described Dode as a son. Don't trifle with sons. You don't possess sons. Invest your life into your son, and you go through having done so. And he said, and I am a father to him. That defines not only the covenant, defines the purpose of the Torah, defines the reason for creation. Everything we need to know about God is revealed therein. And then it's not just that he said, he was a son to me. Boy, we had a great time together. No, it's forever. He said forever and ever. For all time, he is going to be a son for me. And I'm going to be his father forever. Now that means that father and son relationship epitomizes what God intends. There's a reason why the Hebrew word for covenant isn't the same as a contract. It isn't a business agreement. It's based upon the Hebrew word bayeth, which is family. So it is a family environment. In fact, all that time where in this chapter where God is talking about constructing his home, it's we always think about being the first temple or Solomon's temple. God doesn't ever refer to it as throughout that entire discussion. He must mention it, 30 or 40 times. Never refers to it as a temple. Never refers to it as Solomon's either. Never refers to it as first.
No.
It's his home. It's his family. It's always just simply home. Bayeth, the basis of Bereth, family-oriented covenant relationship.
That should be so comforting to everyone.
It should be. It really should be. You would think so. When Yahowah was pestered, beyond, I guess, the point where tolerance, where he was, they finally said, come on, we want to know how to pray. What did, his first statement says, why are you praying? Don't you think your Father in heaven already knows what you want and is already prepared to get you what you need? There's only one thing we need. We need to know him, understand what he's offering, and be able to respond correctly to it. That's all we need. I don't need anything beyond that. Everything else is taken care of. And so when he says that, and then so they're continuing, even though that was his first public declaration, why are you praying? When in fact, your Father already knows what you need.
Yeah.
And is more than willing to give it to you. And so the pastor says, how should we pray? And he says, how about this? Dear Lord. No, he didn't say that, did he?
No.
Jeebus. Oh, my dearest Jeebus. No, he didn't say that either.
No, sir.
Our Father. Not even just my Father. Why do you think he said our Father?
Because it's our Father.
Well, if it was only his Father,
he wouldn't be listening.
Yeah.
If
he ain't your Father too,
Yeah, he ain't listening.
He ain't listening. Save your breath. Our Father. And it's the term that I use all the time is Heavenly Father, because as you said, our Father who is in heaven, our Heavenly Father. And then, of course, set apart is your name.
Wow.
Yeah.
Over there.
Yeah. So, and then one of the first things he said, may your will be done.
Yeah, not ours.
On earth. Yeah, on earth as it is in heaven. Because what is his will? His will is for us to know him, to understand what he's offering, and to respond correctly. That is what his will is. If we do that, then we're in like Dode.
Yeah.
That's his will. Now, when he says his will like it is in heaven, do you think his will is in heaven is being done because there's a bunch of goody two-shoes up there that are super obedient?
No.
No, because the heaven at the time was comprised of Malach.
Yeah.
They do what they're told. And so there you have it. It's quite a lesson to learn.
Oh, by the way, later you might remind folks he also said when you do it, go in the closet.
Yeah, I know.
So you're talking to him instead of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that somehow got passed over. Everybody wants to pray at the table in public or everywhere they go. I mean,
yeah, I know.
It's a private audience if you're going to do that.
It is truly amazing how perverted Christianity and Islam have made the relationship with their wannabe gods. So anyway, this is the second line after Yahshua. Salvation is from Yahweh, introduces himself. He says, he actually speaks in first person for Yahweh. That's the kind of the nature of prophets. There are times where prophets actually speak for themselves, where they say, based upon what I have seen, I want to
report this to you.
Yeah, I want to report this, or I want to make this comment, like Chabauk, when he's being exposed to Paul's rubbish. He says, what in the world are you talking about here? God, you can't die. This because the Pauline Christian myth that it is by God's death that we live, and he's saying, wait a minute, God, what are they talking about here? I mean, fundamental axiom of our existence is that you can't die, and yet they're basing their religion on your death. So. So occasionally they will speak up, but in this particular case, Yahshua is simply conveying what Yahweh said. Listen, spiritual realm, and choose of your own accord to pay attention and respond. Material realm, Yahweh has spoken. I reared my children, lifting them up. I reared my children, lifting them up. God's first words, I reared my children, lifting them up, helping them grow, enabling them to be great. Gadal Benem. I cared for my children, reaching down to lift them up, nurturing and enriching my sons, honoring and empowering my family, promoting and magnifying them, making them important.
Yeah, position of honor.
And I raised them, taking them to a higher place, room. I increased their capabilities, their status, supporting them with everything necessary to keep them safe, providing them with added aptitudes, competencies, proficiencies, all while magnifying their dimensionality. That is a statement of purpose. That is an identity designation.
Mm-hmm.
Yahweh has spoken, I reared my children. That makes him our Heavenly Father. That also makes him our spiritual mother. And he is both.
Mm-hmm.
I reared my children, lifting them up, helping them to grow. I performed the role of a parent. Just think how powerful this introductory statement is. We're not reading now something that, was written by Nostradamus. This wasn't something that could be found in the Federalist Papers. This isn't, the opening chapter of the Encyclopedia Britannica. This is the introduction to the only fully intact and single longest and most informative prophetic statement ever revealed by the Creator of the universe. And the Creator of the universe, as he begins his prophetic testimony to review the history of time and his people, begins by stating that he, Yahowah, has spoken, and that he reared his children, that he lifted his children up so that they could grow. He enabled his children to be great. He reached down to lift up, nurture, and enrich his sons and daughters, empowering his family, promoting and magnifying them. And he raised them, taking them to a higher place, room, increased their capacities and status, supporting them with everything necessary to keep them safe, providing them with added aptitudes, competencies, and proficiencies,
and protection,
while magnifying their dimensionality. The Creator of the universe didn't say, and I was God and they were the things that I created so that I could somehow, play with them. He didn't say, I was God, so I did it so that they could worship me. He didn't say, I am God, to see how much they were willing to sacrifice to earn my affection. He didn't say, I was their Lord, and they were my subjects with whom I controlled. He didn't say, I was the lawgiver, and I laid down the law to them. He didn't say, I was the great mythos, the all-loving being that doesn't need to be known, just believed, who is ready to save everyone. Every aspect of God from a religious or authoritarian perspective was tossed away. He focused on a singular aspect of the relationship, the only one that was important to him.
If you go back to Zon, if you look at the letters, just toss it in for the fun of it, it's Yah, the Almighty, is the Aleph, and then it's cutting the path, that's the Zan, or the Z, which is cutting a path through like a farmer does, and then you have for the inheritance, the Nun. So I mean, it's everywhere you look at it, it's nothing about master slave relationship. It's all Father helping, cutting a path for his
Yazan. Choose of your own accord to pay attention and respond. So he said, choose. This is in the material realm, in the land. Choose. See, hear me. Pay attention. Of your own free will. Listen and come to understand. Pay attention to this communication and reply. Answering appropriate. It was written in the Hiffel stem, which means the subject, which is the message from Yahowah, causes the object, those listening, to understand and respond. And it was written in the imperative mood, which expresses second person volition. And so he's speaking to us in the material realm. We're the second person. Means it's our choice. Choose of your own volition to pay attention and then respond. So what does he want us to do? He wants to pay attention and come to understand that he is acting as our parent. That's the role that he sees himself. And that as a parent, he is not only seeking to, he has done everything necessary to rear his children, to lift them up, to help them grow, to enable them to be great, and to raise them, taking them to a higher place. Realize that and respond. That's it. And by this idea of taking them to a higher place, that's room. We are three-dimensional constructs stuck in the ordinary flow of time. Let's call ourselves 3.5 dimensional. I'm quite convinced that the universe that we exist in is 6 dimensions. Time is the 4th dimension. The 5th and 6th were represented by what we call dark energy and dark matter, the very things that we have no concept what they are, but know that they collectively comprise about 95% of the substance and energy of the universe. One is attractive, one is repulsive in nature. And for Yahowah to have spoken the universe into existence as a 6-dimensional universe, he has to be a 7-dimensional construct. In the 7th dimension, it takes essentially, an extraordinarily little effort and energy by comparison to anything we could possibly imagine to create a lesser dimensional universe. It's like with some imagination and some implements, Walt Disney could create the 2-dimensional realm of Mickey Mouse. And it did not lessen. In fact, it actually enriched to an extraordinary extent Walt Disney to create that 2-dimensional realm and interact with it through the implements of his choice, which were pens and pigments. And so Yahowah and the 7th dimension can very easily speak a 6-dimensional construct into existence. And we, as a 3-dimensional construct stuck in the ordinary flow of time, as we are liberated in time and then moved into past the 4th dimension into the 5th and 6th, with each step upward, our room, our dimensionality is infinitely increased. You know, the difference between 2 and 3 dimensions, between Mickey Mouse and Walt Disney, isn't just, one time you're moving from 2 to 3 dimensions. It's infinite. The difference is infinite. And to move from a 3-dimensional realm to the 4th dimension into space-time, the increase again is infinite. And so this is multiplicities of infinity is the room that he's talking about in terms of taking us to a higher place. He's going to take us to the 7th dimension, where then we're going to have a 6-dimensional universe created in our presence for us to explore and enjoy. And I think to some degree we will be working within that 6-dimensional universe, creating things, testing things, experimenting.
Well, we've all decided it's got to be a learning experience forever, because that's what's the fun part about it.
Yeah, you think of the great voyages of discovery that humankind has gone on. When Lewis and Clark went across the continent, when man traveled to the moon. Think of the work that was required by so many people to make that possible.
Most people forget how they took so much stuff on these ships when they were going off trying to discover places like Australia and all, and they had plants, and they brought samples back. And the whole thing is a scientific journey beyond just a money-making.
Right, yeah. My son is a scientist. When he does reactions, he is putting chemicals to work. And then he goes about the work of observing the results of those reactions and writing about them and codifying them and examining them. It's a very enjoyable form of work. But anyway, that is what God is offering. And so here in the single most important prophetic testimony ever uttered, ever recorded by the creator of the universe to humankind, God introduces himself by saying, please, of your own accord, pay attention to what I'm going to say. and respond. Because I'm telling you that I reared my children. I lifted them up. I helped them grow. I enabled them to be great. I raised them, taking them to a higher place. What more could you ask of a father? What more would you want? If he were to say, okay, I get to write the character references for the creator of the universe that I'm going to get to spend eternity with, what else would you write there in terms of the way that that individual, you would want that individual to treat you?
How much better could you be?
Yeah, but then explain this to me. Why would anyone in their right mind replace that with a God to be feared and a Lord to be worshipped?
Well, you couldn't possibly do that consciously unless you had, at least number one, you don't believe this is true.
No.
Or number two, you are so far gone that you've already been in the wrong camp for so long, you're possessed.
Yeah. Is there any way that you could follow what God just said with the statement, but they failed to worship me?
Absolutely not.
No. Could you follow that statement with they failed to obey me?
There again, you have no options there.
No. I mean, if you were saying this of your son or daughter, you only have, there's only two places you can go from here. And so he's speaking to what he did for his children, and you can say, and, most of my children have taken advantage of this, and we are experiencing the most enjoyable, enlightening, invigorating existence imaginable. See you later. It all worked. I'm glad that we went through this exercise. Or you could say, this is what I did for the children of the covenant.
Ignored me.
But as for the most of you, you've rejected me. You rejected
this was honestly reported.
idea. Mm-hmm. Yep.
This was honestly reported. And in our generation, it wasn't. We know that. Otherwise, there would be no need for all this stuff that you've been doing, and the rest of us have been fortunate to participate in. But if it had been honestly reported, would the results have been better? Or every time you stick your head up and you say this, they just gobble it up?
Yeah, what would have
kind of thing? I mean, I don't. How could?
What would have been the difference had it been accurately translated and reported? What would have been the difference in terms of people's response? I have here a New American Standard Bible, and it claims to be literal, and it reads, "Listen." I got that part right. You know what's amazing about that is that most often they will they don't like to write listen. They will write obey. But this was not Shama. This was Azan. Because Azan is a little different than Shama. Shama just means to listen. That's all it means. Listen. Hear or listen, but that's all it means. Doesn't mean anything else but listen or hear. Azan means to pay attention and understand. To hear and perceive. To process what is being communicated and respond. So they got the first part of it, right? Listen. O heavens. Now, there's no O here. And Shamaim is the heavenly realm. That's the spiritual realm. Yeah. And here, O earth. Now, what they didn't communicate here, of course, was that this was written in the volitional form, saying choose of your own free will to listen.
It's a verb.
Right. And what they also didn't convey here was that Eretz does not mean earth in the sense of heavens and earth. Eretz is the Hebrew word for land, realm. When it's used in conjunction with Shamaim, you're dealing with the spiritual realm and the material realm. when you're dealing with Eretz and associating with Israel, it is the land of Israel. It is a region. It's not the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So God is not asking the planet to listen. He's talking from the spiritual realm to those in the material realm and saying, I want you to listen and pay attention so that you can respond to what's being said. So they just truncate it. Listen, O heavens, and hear, O earth. For the Lord speaks. I didn't see Baal in the... I read the Hebrew words there. Did you see Baal?
Yeah, I don't have that. No.
No.
Really don't.
Is there any way to transliterate, which is to replicate the sound of Yod, He, Wah, He?
Yes.
As Baal?
Oh, no. Absolutely not.
The Yod, He, Wah, He is four vowels.
Anyway,
Yeah, four vowels. Yod, He, Wah, He. 4 vowels. Based on the verb Haya, which tells us how to pronounce it, introduced to us in the Torah, which means teaching on how to pronounce it. And it's Torah tells us how to pronounce it.
Yeah, was and haze and it's just not that hard.
They are just not that hard.
They're very
So no, they could not get it right.
No.
The Lord speaks. And it says here, sons. Now, is it true that benim, ben being the Hebrew word for son, child, masculine, that Hebrew words are all either, they're masculine, feminine, and neuter. And in sons and daughters, there's a masculine and feminine. And in this particular case, there are times where I think it is appropriate to translate ben and benim as sons. And there's times where it's appropriate to render it children in English. Because in English we have the neuter term, the encompassing term. We don't have it in Hebrew.
Yeah.
So you'd say, well, literally it is sons. I'm not so sure. Literally is to correctly and literally represent the message being conveyed from one language to another. And in this case, since it is it was prefixed as in first person. I think it's my children. But that's you can render it sons. It's just that God is clearly, when He's saying I'm talking to you, I want you to listen, material realm. Half of the people in the material realm that have the capacity to listen are women.
Yeah.
So for Him to cut the audience in half by limiting it to sons, I think runs afoul of the intent of the word.
Yeah.
So this was sons, and
but the whole thing is addressed to His family.
Yeah, and they didn't have it as my children, just sons.
Yeah, that's football there.
Right. I have reared and brought up. Sons I have reared and brought up. As opposed to my children. Or I reared my children. Lifting them up, helping them grow, enabling them to be great. Gadol can mean rear, and I included rear in the definition. And they have here reared, and then they have room is brought up. And Gadol can mean reared, but Gadol's primary meaning isn't rear. Gadol means to enable, to help, to lift up, to honor. It's based upon Gadol, and Gadol is to honor, to highly esteem, to
position of honor.
Oh man, you could render it glorify if you wanted to, and you wouldn't be
no, wouldn't be off.
Wouldn't be off. So just to say rear, in the case of the New American Standard Bible, isn't that it's wrong. It's just wholly inadequate.
Yeah.
You're not conveying why the word is based on Gadol, which Gadol is one of the most prominent terms throughout the Hebrew message that Yahowah is conveying. And it's based on, to glorify, to esteem, to do something extraordinary. This is not like rearing a chicken.
Well, I looked it up, and I've got all that right here on my notes. I've got parallel notes on everything we talk about, and it's all there. I mean, you haven't jumped out and become a writer of your own.
No, I didn't have to go very far.
Direct translation.
Right.
For what the words mean.
Doesn't Gadol mean great?
Yeah.
Doesn't it mean to lift up?
It is to become great, to grow up, to magnify, to increase, position of honor.
To empower, to magnify.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I get tired of writing after a while. There were so many of these things. I mean, it's just...
so if you're trying to translate, if you're trying to correctly convey and translate what God said,
mm-hmm.
Are you doing the job if you convey 1/10 of what the word means?
Well, that would be hardly.
I don't think so.
Hardly.
So why
wouldn't you take the time when Yahowah was spending time to talk to you?
Yeah.
This is not a report from down at the railroad office when the train comes in.
Yeah.
This is life and death matter here.
Right. This is the introductory statement in the most important prophecy ever written on our behalf. I reared my children, lifting them up, helping them grow, enabling them to be great. Gadol Benem. And this just says, and brought up. I reared and brought up. Room. Now, to room is to bring up. I will grant you that. But room is to take to raise someone to a higher place.
Right.
And if you're thinking about becoming a child of the covenant, remember when back before he was even Abraham, and Abram got a case of the God. I just don't get it. You keep on telling me that I'm inheriting this wonderful thing. You can do all this wonderful, great, marvelous things for me, and I'm going to have this tremendous inheritance. I don't even have a kid. No, what in the world are you talking about? And so what did God do?
He took him up and showed him.
Yeah, he said.
Showed him light.
Yeah, he began by, in fact, I'm going to end up spending an entire day just on one word, henna. Henna was the original name of the only letter that's repeated twice in Yahweh's name. The henna, which means to look up, to pay attention, to behold, henna. It's the two heys in Yahweh's name, the two people standing up, looking up, reaching up to God. Those are the henna. The letter is repeated twice in the verb that defines who Yahweh is, Haya.
Right.
And it's repeated twice in henna, look up, pay attention, behold. And in the context God uses it, and the first thing that God tells Abraham, and in fact, there are 3 occasions in Abraham's life where this is the first thing God says. Look up. Pay attention. And at that point he said, look up, pay attention. I'm going to show you the heavens. I'm going to show you the stars. I'm going to show you what you're going to inherit. I'm going to take you to the dimensionality of the heavens, the spiritual realm. I'm going to empower you as a material being so that you become like light, like the light of the stars. And then Abram got it, and God says that once Abram was able to calculate what that meant, to understand, to process what all of that meant that God was going to do to enrich and empower him as his inheritance. God said from that moment on, he says, God says, I viewed Abram
as Tzedek.
As Tzedek, yeah, as righteous, as perfect, as correct. And so this is what God is saying, is that I'm going to take you to that kind of a place. This is what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to take you to the spiritual realm. I'm going to empower you like light. You know the equation that associates the difference describes the difference between being in the material realm and being energy, light?
Well, it's the MC squared.
Equals MC squared.
Yeah,
energy is the same as matter multiplied by the speed of light times the speed of light.
Right. Squared.
Yeah. So the speed of light, which is the fastest thing in the universe. It's the universal constant. It's the one thing that it literally is the definition of time, the definition of space. It's the constant of the universe. That light, where time exists, that light energy is that it is so much more empowered than matter. You have to multiply matter times the speed of light times the speed of light to relate it to energy.
It's a big number.
That is the equation that God is saying here by room. And I'm going to take you to a higher place. I'm going to increase your dimensionality. Now, room is an extraordinary word. Room is part of there's three words that are kind of all related in the sense, cum, with a Q, cum with a K, and room are all the idea of standing up, and taking a stand to go to a higher place. You know, the old campfire song, Kumbaya?
Kumbaya, yeah.
Yeah, it means stand.
And with Yah.
With Yah.
Well, I told you during the break, I mean, now it's hard for me not to think dimensionals and about dimensionality when you use these words. I mean, you translate me, and I always put the same note in there, think dimensionally, seventh dimension, on down, so.
Yes.
And by the opposite of that is, my God, he's telling you, if you pursue these other gods and promote them, I'll put you in a one-dimensional world. I won't even let you just die.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, how horrible.
Yeah. He's saying if you are simply fooled, played for a fool, you just absolutely squander this marvelous opportunity to become Yahweh's son or daughter. Then you go to zero dimensions. Mm-hmm. You just cease to exist.
Right. That's what I have there. Zero.
Yeah, zero dimensions. You cease to exist. But if you are part and parcel of leading people astray, if you're religious, overtly political, overtly militaristic, God, I tell you, every time I see, and this is now the 4th of July weekend for America, and every time I see some celebrity, and I was watching a golf tournament, and a golfer I actually like, Phil Mickelson, said, you know, at this time of year, we really ought to make our contribution to it and offer to give our support to those who have gone off in service to provide our freedom. And they just want to puke.
Yeah.
God hates the military. And the reason for the flood is because mankind had become overtly violent. The very thing that God said that the worst aspect of government, the thing that government will do all the time, consistently, and is their worst hallmark.
Raise an army.
Raise an army. Raise an army and deploy it.
Stuff.
God despises militaries. He despises them. That is the entire reason for the flood. Was the wholesale violence that was being perpetrated by mankind on the earth. And so you see that, you just go and you want to cringe. You know, God's idea is that He wants us to rely on Him, not human institutions, to take us to this higher place. And rather than man and militaries and government and religion being the solution, God says no. That if you choose those things and you promote those things, then what I'm going to do is there's a consequence. You're going to eternally exist in one dimension. I'm going to put you in a lightless place where time is infinite.
Right.
You know, that's kind of like the torture, that ongoing. That was one of the things, by the way, I did ponder as I was dealing with 3 weeks of this systemic poison ivy, was what it would be like to be suspended right now in this condition. And that's what most of mankind has chosen.